Hi, this is Tracy Coyer, host of The Real American. I'm joined tonight by a special guest, the Honorable Bill Boyd. Most of the people in town know Mr. Boyd. He has been a city council or town councilor, as well as a state representative for several years. Bill, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good tonight, Tracy. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I can't think of anybody I'd rather spend tonight with than you.
Oh, honored and privileged. Honored and privileged. Thank you.
So, Bill, I want to touch on a couple things, and for the people who don't know you, just give us a little bit of your history. You know, when you started on the town council. I know it was about 10 years, I think.
That's correct. I live on Joppa Row with my wife of 20 years, and my daughter Jade, and everybody knows me in town knows that I run sled dogs. So, those that are familiar with my dog truck, they see me in and around town. But back in 2011, prior to 2011, I was on the planning board and I chaired the Economic Development Citizens Advisory Commission. I did a year on the school budget committee, and that kind of prepped me for running for the town council back in 2011. And I served on the town council for 10 years. I just got elected to my fourth term when I was asked to run in the special election to serve up in Concord, which I did, and won the special election, and then won re-election in 22. So that's kind of the narrative.
That's when Speaker Hinch died.
That's correct.
That special election.
That special election, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Now, when you were with the town council, you had something to do with the water issues we're having in Merrimack.
Well, the water issue started in 2017 when Saint-Gobain disclosed that there was a problem, and obviously there was a process involved, and through the process we learned about PFOAs and the impact that it's had on our drinking water here in Merrimack. And at that particular time, the state had settled, had an MTBE settlement with ExxonMobil, and $277 million ExxonMobil had to pay over to the state as part of the MTBE settlement. It was put into a trust fund. Chapter 487E was an animal of the legislature, which created the vehicle by which the funds were deposited into. It created a trust fund, and out of that trust fund, the New Hampshire Drinking Water and Groundwater Advisory Commission emerged, a 17-member panel. And having been on the council, I submitted a resume and a letter to Governor Sununu looking to be the public member with a public drinking water utility in the community. That was one of the representations, and I applied for that and got appointed to the commission. And I've been there ever since 2017. I currently chair the commission right now, and application process for anybody that has issues with source water development, wellhead protection, infrastructure, contamination cleanup, getting municipalities over the hump with specific projects. We've been able to look at all sorts of applications that have been presented to us from communities and public water utilities throughout New Hampshire, and we've been able to leverage that $277 million. We've actually allocated $200 million in grant and loans to a myriad of communities throughout New Hampshire, including Merrimack, who's benefited from it, from cleanup, some of the remediation we've done at 2, 3, 7, and 8, additional remediation at 4 and 5. Matter of fact, MVD just came to the commission. It's going to be voted on in November, looking to get additional grant monies to handle infrastructure projects off of Wilson Hill Road and Mason Road. We're going to potentially looking at hooking up, I think it's anywhere from 40 to 80 households that have been impacted by PFAS issues with their wells, going to be hooking up to Merrimack Village District as a consequence. So that project's going to come to my commission in November. But working with all sorts of not just PFAS, lead, your manganese and obviously manganese, and I can't think of the other iron and manganese. There's a lot of communities, a lot of that is naturally organic occurring. So we've got, we've had some people that have presented applications to us for first review. So, but circling back, it's little did I realize what I thought would be trying to get myself involved on this commission to potentially be in a position to help Merrimack out with some of our water pollution and water contamination issues that I realized that I would be there now coming up on my 8th year, and having a far-ranging impact on other communities that have been going through similar impacts like Merrimack. Tremendously rewarding.
In comparison to when the problem from St. Cobain was originally unearthed, if you will, for the people that are on the public water in Merrimack, like I am,
Right.
We're fed by the MVD. How has the water quality been improved over the past?
So the grant and loan money, which was approved by the ratepayers in 2019, allowed down the south end of town. There is basically a big charcoal granulated activated carbon filter that is responsible for water coming in from particular wells that have been impacted by PFAS. It goes through this particular filter. The water gets channeled through, and it gets blended, and then on the back end, you've got clean water. It's, I don't mean to have it sound simplistic, but MVD, and I don't work for MVD, and I'm kind of like on the outside looking in, but they've had specific filtration in place to deal with the iron and manganese issue, which has been it's been a problem ever since I first moved to town 20 years ago. But then you add in the PFAS piece, it's added an extra layer of filtration to handle that particular pollutant that impacted our public drinking water. And unfortunately, there was a period of time where, and still is with people on private wells that have to rely on bottled water. There was a period of time where before the standards got stricter, water standards as it relates to PFAS were here, and the standard was up here. And now, as that standard has dropped down to below here, it has obviously compelled Merrimack to tackle that issue so that it's as close to non-detect as possible. So, our drinking water, and if members of MVD were sitting here right now, they'd be able to tell you that our drinking water is pure. It's good. Okay. It's drinkable. It's potable. Okay. So we've been very fortunate in that regard.
All right. Now, how long do you think it's going to be before the entire problem is resolved?
Oh,
or do you think it ever will be?
This is going to be your grandkids' bill that they're going to be paying for, Tracy. It's going to be a lifelong. They call these chemicals forever chemicals for a reason. They ain't going away. Hate to use that word "ain't," but it's the truth. So we were very fortunate that the ratepayers that live in Merrimack, they approved the grant, receiving the grant money. They approved the loan money, and they were willing to absorb some of the maintenance costs moving forward to ensure that those people that are serviced by MVD have access to clean, potable drinking water. Pennachuck has a similar situation as well. So people that are down the south end of town that are on the Pennachuck has a similar setup as well. A little bit different from Merrimack's, but it's pretty much the same idea. It's the same thing. So we're lucky.
How many wells does Merrimack have? Is it 5?
It's a good question. We have folks that are watching this, don't quote me, but I want to say we have anywhere from 10 to 12.
Really?
1 and 2 are offline. That is legitimate contamination that's down the south end of town by the Nashua Hollis town line. There was a place called Merrimack Metals that unfortunately was dropping some really bad chemicals. I can't even pronounce the chemicals. So you got 13 consonants and 9 syllables that go with it, and bad stuff. And they're beyond remediation, unfortunately. Okay. So you've got wells 2, 3, 7, and 8, and then you got 5 and 6. 5 and 6 have been impacted by a high level of sodium chloride that have impacted the aquifer down off of Industrial Boulevard, which, looking back this past year, we're working with the Department of Transportation to really limit the salt intake along Industrial Drive, which has had, quite honestly, it has had the effect on increasing the level of sodium chloride that exists in those 2 particular wells. And unfortunately, MVD has had to shut down those particular wells. So with 2, 3, 7, and 8, MVD is able to position itself to be able to provide water
Now,
to the town.
right at the top of my street on Pheasant Run, there's
Okay.
a wellhead there.
Right.
I don't know if it's active or not, but I know that for the longest time, since as long as I can remember, I was told that it wasn't, but I don't know if it is now.
I'm not familiar. Candidly, I'm really not familiar with that well at
That's
Pheasant
fine.
Run. So
That's fine.
Right.
But things are going to get better.
things are going to get better. The community of Merrimack has made a commitment that they've said we want the bill, we're willing to pay the bill, and nobody likes to pay a high water bill.
No.
But the alternative is, being sick from it, and nobody, we're beginning to scratch the surface and some of the long-term effects that PFAS has had on the community public health, not just in Merrimack, but obviously over in Pease, Londonderry, Litchfield, just to name a few.
Well, I'm very happy to hear the Republican is actually interested in clean water and clean air, because I've been told my whole life that we cared nothing about any of that stuff, but apparently that's not the case.
I run my sled dogs. I'm outside, and it's important. The air that we breathe and the water that we drink it's vital for survival. Period. There's no way of saying it any better than that, Tracy. So to say that you're against that is,
we know what it is,
it's not
but
a
we're
good
not
thing.
going to say it.
I understand.
So, that being said, I know that you also, in your time in Concord, have had some dealings with the highway projects going on.
Right.
Especially the Everett Turnpike expansion.
It's huge. I can go back in 2015, myself and Councilor Dan Dwyer, we had received a presentation from the DOT, and they were announcing that they were expanding that stretch of road basically from the Mass border up to where the Bedford toll plazas are located, going from 2 to 3. And Councilor Dwyer and I are like, why are we wasting our time with 3? You should go to 4.
Absolutely.
And I've really have tried to vocalize that, anecdotally, I don't have the data here in front of me. I've seen the data, but there always seems to be an uptick of accidents occurring, not just on the southbound side, but on the northbound side of the Effie Everett Turnpike. And when you're looking at a very narrow stretch of roadway, I'm not sure expanding to 3 lanes is really going to be a significant improvement that's going to not only increase the flow on both sides of the roadway, but to allow for people to get from point A to point B at an appropriate rate of speed that's been established on that roadway, and be able to do it accident free. I think widening it to 4 lanes is really going to solve a much larger problem as it relates to, at least from my vantage point, some of the accidents that have been occurring on the roadway. So you've got you've got that, that single issue. Number 2, construction's going to happen. There are going to be times that people are probably not going to want to sit on the Effie Everett, and I can only imagine that the north-southbound corridor, Daniel Webster Highway, is going to have some impacts as a result of what the DOT is doing with their construction projects. So to me that's a quality of life issue. People need to be able to go from point A to point B, be able to recreate and congregate, freely, and be able to ride their bike or drive their car, or be able to, cross the street with relative safety. So I actually have a larger concern of some of the increased traffic flows that could be migrating onto Daniel Webster Highway. So that's, that certainly has been part of the conversation that I've had with Commissioner Cass and the members of his leadership team. But the third point, we've harkening back to when I was on the planning board, you have Merrimack 360, which is they have the new apartment building. You got Haywood's Ice Cream. You've got Altitude and all sorts of new restaurants. I mean, the gentleman that put a lot of time and sweat equity to turn a blighted, dilapidated shopping plaza into something that's, it's a destination location now, which is a good thing. I've really asked DOT to add another emergency access egress at that particular location, because we've got one up the north end of town. We really could use one down the south end of town. Makes a lot of sense, considering that we don't have an on-ramp in between, exit 11 and exit 12, and it can be problematic for where the fire station is located, with the potential bottleneck that you have at the Chamberlain Bridge, being able to, swoop down, hit, make the loop by Common Man and come north, be easier to cut in through there. And they've acknowledged that, that's going to be part of the plan, to add, that particular emergency access point for our first responders to gain access, on and off of the FEA Turnpike. So I think that's a good thing. But the noise problem, I think, is going to be exacerbated, because you're widening lanes, you're increasing a flow of traffic, you are increasing the number of cars. So there needs to be, there's going to need to be, barriers put in place along that particular roadway, which, myself and some of our other colleagues, like Representative Mooney and Representative Healy, Representative Notter, and Representative McHugh have done to articulate and advocate for making sure that the barriers are up to, again, mitigate noises as much as possible. And I've quibbled with DOT with some of their noise readings. They're doing it at a time of day when there's nobody out there.
Of course.
It's our decibel levels are fine. Well, it's difficult to say that you agree with them when they're doing it at 2:00 in the afternoon, as opposed to 6:30 in the morning to 8:30, 9 o'clock, doing it at the optimal peak times, which some of the viewers are going to be like, they're going to find probably kind of absurd, but it's true that some of the noise testing that they've done have been kind of interesting times of the day, to say the least. So
I look at the apartment development that has taken place over the past few years, and I mean, going back to Silos, when it was still Silos, and now it's the Homestead, which, by the way, is a very, very nice restaurant. But my wife was a postal worker for a brief time, and the buildings that have gone up are just massive. I mean, absolutely massive.
Yep, they're big.
And, the development behind or by, I believe it's called AMC Theaters. I think they've since closed. But, over by that.
Oh, yeah.
That's another huge
the development right in front, which is the old Woodridge Suites. You get the Holiday Inn across the street. Then you've got the the apartment buildings there that are supposed to be temporary, not permanent, but temporary extended stay.
Right.
The whole point of how that was zoned back in the day was minimal use, because you got a lot of neighborhoods that about what used to be Cinemagic. All those neighborhoods off of Turkey Hill Road. Before they had a little bit of a buffer. Now they are literally looking at concrete boxes in their backyard with minimal buffer, and so there's been a lot more exposure. And I know, I know the neighborhood has not been happy about that.
The population increase has been dramatic.
It's been significant. I agree.
And just the traffic on Daniel Webster, going from Reed's Ferry Market all the way up to Lowe's,
right,
is so congested. And I mean, that used to be the easy way to get home and go back, and now it's not.
It's been so problematic that a constituent who lives in Webster Green approached me and said, "Bill, can we get some traffic calming along these roadways, because we've got school buses going in both directions. Can we get some signage?" And the Department of Transportation, their civil engineers work with a standardized book of regulations that they follow, which I guess in the grand scheme of things, I understand. I get my dad was a land surveyor, and you've got specific things you got to follow, but common sense needs to kick in at some particular point. How difficult is it to put up a sign that shows school buses? And we were able to get that done working with DOT, and certainly want to thank, Manager McCallie and the school superintendent, Bill, oh my God, I can't think of, Bill Olson. Just had to get letters to the DOT, letters. Can we please have signs saying that we get school bus school bus stops ahead? And that's been able to, I think, really kind of to quell people that have been passing school buses on that particular stretch of roadway, which it's common sense, Tracy. When you see the lights, you stop.
Most people do.
Most people do. Excuse me. So the fact that the fact that we were able to get that particular signage up is a good thing. Being able to have some of the markings on the roadway, that's still kind of a work in progress, because now you're getting into an ownership piece, which is kind of it's what I would call an interagency tug of war of, okay, we can do it, but who's responsible for the upkeep? And then it's like, well, I don't want to do it. Well, I don't want to do it. Well, I don't want to. I don't like that sort of thing. It's about, it's about quality of life. It's about people that are living there, that live there, raising their family there, having, an assurance of public safety that, when their child gets on and gets off the bus, that protocols are in place to quell the traffic on that particular roadway, but B, they're going to be able to get off safely and be able to get home safely. It's not an unreasonable request.
All right, now I'm going to shift gears a little bit as we wind down.
Gotcha.
Concord's coming up, November 5th
November
is
5th, election day.
The Merrimack team, or Team Merrimack, the 8 Republicans that are on the ticket are all looking for your vote, all hoping that we'll have your support. But the one thing I want to ask you, Bill, is what do you think is the most important thing that's going to be accomplished over the next 2 years?
I think there's a couple of things. Number one, when I started on the town, if I could just step back a little bit. When I started on the town council in 2011, our town was growing, our town was changing. The question was not the change, but how we would embrace the change and be able to move forward. And that growth created a lot of revenue in my community. In the town of Merrimack, from my council days, we were very robust in being able to fix things, be able to put specific things into place. Some of the amenities, like the improvements at Watson Park that were made. Watson Park, we've been able to do so much. We were able to keep the tax rate extremely manageable for that particular period of time, because of the robust revenues. We could actually give some of those revenues back to the taxpayer in town in the form of rate relief. Now things are changing. The economy is slowing down. Inflation is finally catching up with us. Revenues are not as robust as they once were, and I think there's going to be a period of austerity, not just here in town, but also at the state. So I think that the big issue is taking the budget that we have, working with whomever the governor is going to be. Hopefully it's Kelly Ayotte, but working with the governor and having a reasonable approach to what we think revenues are going to be for the next 2 years, so that we can have a budget that is representative of and maintaining some of the gains that we've done throughout the years, but also not overspending beyond our means. I mean, let's be honest. Some of the revenue numbers that I've seen were, already depending on who you talk to, we're already $1 million, behind. So there's going to be some tough decisions that are going to need to be made up in Concord, not just in the House, but in the Senate and whoever sits in the corner office. That's probably going to be the biggest issue that we face up in Concord. And then to be parochial, as I've alluded to, the FE Everett Turnpike, the expansion is going to be getting, and again, how the town's able to work with the state to be able to minimize impacts to the town, is going to be mission critical to traffic flow and maintaining quality of life in the community. But thirdly, I would say, as it relates to particular issues, ensuring that government continues to be efficient, government continues to be providing the level of service that not just the town of Merrimack, but every citizen in the state has grown to enjoy over the last 5 to 10 years. Like I said, harkening back to having a very robust economy, we've been able to do certain things, and I think as this economy hits a stag, I don't want to say hits a stopping point, it hits a slowdown point. How we're able to be proactively dealing with that slowdown point, I think is going to really drive how not just the town of Merrimack, but how the state recovers from that particular slowdown, so that we can get that engine churning and begin to move forward again, like we experienced robustly over the last 10 to 12 years.
Excellent. Well, as we finish up here, I am just going to say, everyone watching, please remember, November 5th is the date. Bring friends, bring relatives, anybody that lives in town. Doesn't matter who you vote for, just get out there and do it. I'm hoping that it's going to be us, and if it's not, so be it. But we're here to serve you. We're here to be your voice. And I'm going to say again, thank you, Mr. Boyd, Representative Boyd. It's always a pleasure to see you, my friend.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. And to the voters on November 5th, I sincerely, it's been an honor and a privilege to not only serve you behind the dais at Town Hall, but in Representatives Hall up in Concord. And on November 5th, should you send me back to Concord, it would continue to be an honor and a privilege to be one of your 8 representatives up at Congress, and I humbly ask you for your vote. Thank you. And Tracy, thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching.